So, Tim, what we'll do is we're going to let people start coming in. We'll give them just a couple of minutes, and I'll introduce you and turn it over. I believe you're going to start us with an update, and then we'll go to questions. So we'll do all that in just a minute. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. I know a lot of our guys have had questions.
You're very welcome, and I like the article that you read in the HBJ recently.
I was tickled that you put all of our points to the governor.
Uh-oh.
Did she freeze, Timothy?
Yep. It might have dropped her. Zoom does that to me all the time.
I know, it's a lovely device, but let me see if I can.
It's great when it works, but about half the time it drops me.
All right, well, I just texted her. I know she's figuring it out. And she also has internet issues sometimes, so it happens.
Okay.
Yeah, she'll rejoin us in just a moment.
Okay. And if there's a further issue, just I'm at your disposal. If you want to start and have me dance for a while, that's okay.
Sure, we can do that. I think that's totally fine. Hi, everyone. You can't hear me right now. Oh, it does look like Melissa's rejoining. Hooray.
Yes. Sorry about that. Okay. Looks like we've got probably about half the participants I'm expecting. We'll give it just another couple of minutes, and then we will get started, just to be respectful of everybody's time. And just give us another moment or two. Thank y'all. Okay, thank y'all so much for joining in. We really appreciate everyone taking time out of their crazy day, but especially Tim, with our friend over at the Small Business Administration. Our format for today is that we're going to get an update from Tim on all the different things that are ever evolving and changing, but we definitely want to take y'all's questions. So if you have a question, there's a Q&A box at the bottom, and you can feel free to type them in there, and I will keep an eye on those. We may not get all the questions answered, and if not, I will work with our friends and partners over at the SBA to get you some specific information. So with that, I would like to just turn it over to Mr. Jeffcoat to help us out. What do we need to know today?
Thank you very much, Melissa. Hi, everybody. I hope you're all doing well and your businesses are doing okay as well. What's going on? So we have two main programs coming from the SBA to help businesses that are affected by the economic side of this COVID health disaster. One is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is basically closed to everyone except agricultural businesses. So if you never applied for that, then you still can't. So let's put that one aside. And now let's talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. So it's been around since, oh my gosh, for 3 months now, just about. There have been a lot of loans as a result of the Paycheck Protection Program, and then a whole set of adjustments were just made to the program. On the end of the day, Friday, the president signed what's called the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act, PPPFA, and so now that is in law. So now we're in the process of turning that into policy. So the way this works is Congress tells us, hey, we'd like you to do something like this. And that's what an act is in a very high level sense. So now as the agency that has to implement it, we then take what they wrote and the president signed, and we turn that into practice. So the practice and the act aren't always exactly the same. The idea is that we always recognize and respect the spirit of the act. But when it comes to actual implementation details, sometimes it varies. So I'll give you a really quick update on what it says. So that you know, though, we will be issuing a whole new set of what we call guidance. So this guidance tells you, the borrower, and we try to help you interpret that, what to do with this Paycheck Protection Program loan and how to earn maximum forgiveness. As you probably know, and I glossed over this, Paycheck Protection Program loans, if used correctly, can be 100% forgiven. So you do have the ability to get one of these loans and never have to pay a penny. SBA may pay it off on your behalf. So we will be issuing the new guidance. My guess, it'll be late this week, could even be next week before that's issued. There will be a new application form for people that want to borrow a Paycheck Protection Program loan. If there's somebody on this webinar that has not done that yet and you're thinking about it, let me tell you that you have until June 30th, not only to apply, but to get it approved. So I would encourage you to have your application in by June 15th with the banker of your choice, so that they have time to process it and get it approved at the SBA, so that you can be, be approved by June 30th. If it's a 1 day late, then it's 1 day too late. It's not going to happen. And then finally, there will be a modified loan forgiveness application. Right now, there's an 11-page document called the Loan Forgiveness Application, and that will be modified to reflect some of these changes. So what are they? I'll go over them really quickly. Some of this you may know. The Paycheck Protection Program loans were supposed to be, from the time it was dispersed to you, you had 8 weeks to spend it in a certain way in order to earn maximum forgiveness. That has now been expanded to 24 weeks, so you have a lot more time. If you already have a PPP loan, you are allowed to stay with an 8-week period if you would like. I'm not sure why you would, but you can. Also, previously, you would have heard me say you want to spend 75% or more on paychecks, 25% or less on non-paycheck expenses, which are only in 3 categories: rent for real and personal property. So that means, say, for your restaurant, as well as rental of any other things you use for your restaurant. If you're renting copiers, if you're renting delivery vehicles for catering, what have you, then that rent. Interest on mortgage type loans, so both real and property. So if you have long-term loans on equipment in your restaurant, then that interest can be paid that way as well. And then utility payments. That has now been turned into 60-40. So you can do 60% or more for payroll and 40% or less for these non-payroll expenses. I'm not going to read this thing to you. I'm looking over here at my other screen, but I'm going to tell you what it says. It says, and I think this is really pertinent for restaurants, if you couldn't return to, I'm looking for some words, the same level of business activity as you had prior to February 15th, 2020, because you were following guidelines such as those from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, from Health and Human Services, or from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, then that lets you have a longer period until December 31st in order to bring back and achieve your full-time equivalent headcount. That's a really important point. Previously, you had until June 30th to bring back your FTE equivalents, your full-time equivalent employee count, in order to earn forgiveness based on number of employees. Now this basically says you have until December 31 if that's why you were not able to return to full capacity, or not full capacity, but back to the business levels you had before February 15th. Now let's talk about that just a little bit longer. Here, if you're in Harris County, for instance, Harris County, if your restaurant goes to close for a certain period of time, and then you can reopen, but only a 25% capacity or 50% capacity or whatever it is. That doesn't count. That definitely inhibits you, but this is only saying if you had to comply with something from CDC, Centers for Disease Control, OSHA, or the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So I think that when the Harris County issued their decision that you needed to close, they included in there the requirement from the CDC. So you should be fine. but you want to look at that declaration by Harris County as to why you had to close. Also, it gives you 2 more what we call exceptions on FTEs. You had 50 FTEs before, you're only able to hire back 40. Well, if the other 10 fell into 5 buckets, then they don't have to be counted and you can still get full forgiveness. So there's 3 buckets we've been talking about all along. There's 2 new ones. One is you were simply unable to rehire somebody that you had working before February 15th. It doesn't ask for a reason, just as you were simply unable to rehire them. Or you're unable to hire somebody similarly qualified. And that's all the way until December 31st. So you get a long time to find that person. So those are 2 exceptions that can help you. If you have a balance remaining on your loan when you're done, then it was that you would get, that would convert into a loan at 2 years at 1% interest. If you have a current loan, that is still the case. If you have a PPP now and there's a balance remaining on it, then that will convert into a 2-year loan at 1% interest, and it had 6 months loan payment deferral. So after the end of your 8-week period, that means you'd still have 4 months before you'd have to start making a payment. Now, as of June 5th, on new loans, that's going to cover, it's going to give you a 5-year term at 1% interest, so 3 years longer. And that's going to be a benefit to those that get a loan June 5th and later. Now, if you already have a loan, what I would encourage you to do if you are interested in that is contact your lender, tell them you want the 5-year term that they are giving on new loans. The worst thing that will happen is they'll say no. The best thing is they'll say yes, or they might hit somewhere in the middle and say, you know what, we'll give you 3.5 years and just split it down the middle. At least you're better off if you have a balance. Also, I talked about the deferral period of that 6-month deferral on payments. That's now different. The way it works now is you go through your period, 24 weeks, you spend your money, you earn your forgiveness, you apply for forgiveness with the bank. The bank has 60 days to work on that. If they approve, we send it to the SBA. We say we'll take 90 days, and then how much the forgiveness is, we make that payment on your behalf to your bank, paying off that much of your loan. At that point, that's the first point you would begin making payments. So if it actually took your bank longer than 60 days, and then it took the SBA longer than 90 days, you don't care, because in the meantime, you're not making any payments, and you won't make any until we finally make that payment on behalf of your loan. That is when you will begin for the first time to start making payments. So those are the updates, Melissa. I know that was a bunch of details. Let me, I'm sure what everybody wants to do is ask questions, and I will do my very best to help you.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing, we still have some kind of open questions about the EIDL, the EIDL loans.
Yeah.
So I think some people were able to apply but hadn't heard back or hadn't had it released. You said it's only for agriculture. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there, unfortunately, in my office, there's almost nothing I can do for you where it relates to an economic injury disaster loan. I know it would seem to you, and I agree with you, that we're all one big happy SBA and I should be able to go to this computer right here and look up your information and do something with it, but I can't. It's a separate part of the SBA called the Office of Disaster Assistance. So if you have applied for an EIDL loan and you have not gotten it yet, then I can paste into the chat box a phone number that you need to call. And at that phone number, they can give you status. You may have to call more than once, but you should be able to get your status. There have been over 5 million businesses apply for this loan. That's about a 5,000-fold increase on an annual basis in what our Office of Disaster Assistance would normally see. So imagine if you had 5,000 times as many customers show up at your restaurant, what would you do? So that's what they're going through. Not an excuse, and they're working as fast as they can to address everybody, but it is really taking some time. So first, if you've applied, you can call this number and they will be able to help you out there. If you're looking for your EIDL grant, that would have been part of your application. When you applied, you would have given a routing number and an account number for your bank account. that money would have been deposited directly into your account. We wouldn't tell you when it happened. So you go back and look at your account, and you may find a deposit from the U.S. Department of Treasury. And in the coding, it'll say EIDG, Economic Injury Development Grant. That's how you'll know what that money is. And it would be calculated as $1,000 per employee. So if you have more than 10 employees, it would have been $10,000. So let me grab that phone number quick, Melissa, and drop it, whoops, in the chat box.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm a little confused, and that's probably not surprising, but everybody's been able to apply for the EIDL loans, but they haven't, because they're only, at the moment, they're only giving them out to agriculture. Is that correct?
No, they're only accepting new applications from agriculture. Everyone that has applied will either be one of two things. Whoa.
I've still got you going live, Tim.
There you are.
Yeah.
I have 3 screens in here, and every one of them shut down, and now they're back. Okay, I see myself moving, so it must be working. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
What was I saying? That really.
So you were talking about the agriculture loan. So
Yeah. So everyone that has applied, either you're going to be approved or you're going to be denied. But it is being worked on. If you applied, someone is working on it.
Okay.
If you are denied, this is real important. If you get denied, there will be a reason. It'll be on the letter, and it'll probably won't make any sense. If that's the case, let us know, and we will be happy to decipher it for you. That's something we can help you with. For instance, it might say, it doesn't show that you had economic injury, or it might say, it couldn't verify some information. Well, I don't know why they put it in code words, but if you contact our office, and I'll put that information in the chat box, we can help you decipher what it means, but even more importantly, you get a chance to appeal that decision.
Okay.
So we can connect you with folks that can help you work on that appeal and try to make it be as compelling as possible.
So the next question that we've had folks come up and ask is, again, sticking with the same type of EIDL loan, how are the amounts determined? Because some people who have gotten more, some people are not more, has gotten all they asked for, some people have gotten less. What's the determining factor there?
Yeah, so ordinarily, and I keep saying during a normal disaster, as if there is such a thing, but say this time last year or during Harvey, it's pretty straightforward. It's up to $2 million, and the loan is based on the amount of money it takes to basically keep your business open for as long as the disaster is expected to occur, with a ceiling of $2 million. Under COVID, that's completely changed. And under COVID, there's kind of a more automated method now of generating the loans. It is not necessarily completely, it's not based on the full extent of your economic need. And bottom line is it's not $2 million maximum any longer. I don't know that there is a maximum that's stated publicly, but the way this works is that there's, as I say, 5,000 times as many people applying, and there's only a finite amount of money. So they've taken that finite amount of money and divided it by 5.5 million applicants, and they said, okay, that's the maximum we can do. So there are people that are expecting to get $1 million or $2 million EIDL loans, and then they find out they're being limited to maybe 150,000. That's why. So hopefully whatever amount gets offered is going to be acceptable and is going to be enough to make a difference for you. But if it's not, contact my office, and I put my email address in here for my office, and we may be able to help. I cannot tell you we will, and I think the odds are slim, but we may be able to help you get an increase in that amount. If we can't help you get an increase in that amount, then we may be able to help you find other sources of financing that can help you through this process.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you very much. I know that's been a big question for folks. So jumping over to our PPP and our returning personnel challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically, if we have an employee who quit because they're telling us they can make perfectly fine money, equal money or more money from what they're receiving from unemployment plus the little extra, how does that impact the PPP? What do we do in that case?
All right, there's 2 important things. In the case of PPP, you're fine. If they just say, I don't want to come back, then you don't have to bring them back. You can first, the offer needed to be in writing, and it needed to be at the amount they were making previously. And if they say no, then you put that documentation in your files, and that is one FTE you do not have to hire. So
And is that amount by salary and hours, or just by salary?
If they're a salaried person, it would be by salary. If they're an hourly person, then I think it would be by rate of pay.
Okay.
So
right.
if it's $10 an hour, well, I think it would be by pay and hours, because the two of those comprise the earnings. So I think that would be the answer there. But if they don't accept that offer to come back, then you document that, and you don't have to hire that head any longer. So if you normally had 50 people and this person says they're not coming back, and you document that, then you now only have to do 49 people in order to be at your FTE. Now, the other important thing though, Melissa, is they say they can make more money on unemployment. Well, guess what? You've recalled them. So they're no longer unemployed now. They are now, they're no longer unemployed and eligible for unemployment compensation. They're now unemployed and no longer eligible for unemployment compensation because you have recalled them.
Right.
So it really makes sense for them to come back to work, because they might get it another week or two, but it would be under fraudulent terms. And I don't know if Texas Workforce Commission is going to come find them and get their money back, but they can't choose to be on unemployment. Only the employer can choose for them to be on unemployment.
So how would that differ if they qualify for one of the reasons for staying, such as caring for an elderly person, health issues, child care? How would we want to document that?
Well, and those are valid, and and thank you for bringing those up. Now, as long as you document it, for whatever the reason, they can just simply refuse, or they can have a reason. It doesn't matter. As long as you document what occurred, then you're fine.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So just before we get too far down, and I mean, there are for sure some weeds, but if you were, best practices, what kind of things would you be suggesting that folks are doing day in and day out, documenting, et cetera, to make sure that that loan is forgivable? Like, what are just some of the best practices? Because we don't want everyone scrambling in December trying to figure out how to make it forgivable and can't go backwards. So what should people be doing right now?
There are three things you do to earn maximum forgiveness. And what I would recommend to you, and what I would certainly be doing if I were in your shoes, excuse me, is I would be doing everything I could to earn 100%. Why pay back a loan if you don't have to? So three things. First, depending on the problem, Melissa, is right now, I don't know if you're going to be doing 75-25 or 60-40. We're waiting on the guidance on that. Whatever the split is, let's just go back to the old 75%, 25% under the 8-week system. I would tell you, make absolutely sure that you are paying each employee at least 75% of what you used to pay them. Now, the used to pay them is based on a couple of periods, and you can choose which period you want to look at. But basically, it's what you paid them last year. So on average, if you're paying Melissa $50,000 a year last year, then make sure you're paying her that much now. And if you need to pay her less, then make sure it's at least 75% of that. That's currently how you're going to earn the maximum forgiveness based on paying your employees.
Okay. And if somebody wasn't an employee during that period, the look back period, what numbers are being used for that? If they were not employed, it's irrelevant. Right. So, if somebody came in January and they were furloughed late February, what period should we be looking back for that person?
I don't know. That's a good question, because when this first began, the 75% was everything we all looked at appeared to be aggregate payroll. Right. Well, now when you apply for forgiveness, it's per employee. So in that case, I would look back at January until I only had them a month. And in January, I paid them $10 an hour. And now I'm paying them $8 an hour. And that's more than 75%. So you should be good. And but also if it's an hourly employee, you said to be careful with the hours to make sure those are equivalent.
so that
Yeah.
week
Now, in
over
their
week.
case, yeah, now that would be a separate issue.
Right.
So making sure they're making at least 75% or more is one of them. The other one is your full-time equivalents. So
Right.
again, your look back period, calculate, and you have two ways to calculate your FTEs, and I would encourage you to calculate them both ways so that you can decide which one is most advantageous for you to get maximum forgiveness. But as long as you achieve that same FTE from the look back period, barring exceptions, which we were just talking about, such as people won't come back to work, as long as you achieve that FTE, then there will be no reduction in forgiveness based on FTEs. Then the only reduction in forgiveness you could get is because you spent the money incorrectly. And incorrectly would mean paying people less than 75% of what they were paying, or spending more than 25% of the money on non-payroll expenses.
Okay. So
Those are the best things to do. Now, all that may change now, Melissa. I mean, I know we're having this webinar right now. Probably by Friday, we're going to have a new set of guidance.
okay.
And then it will probably be on 60%, 40%. Same concept, but should be 60% of pay, 40% for non-pay.
And to make sure that they're working through the calculations the best way possible, is this where they go back? Should our members go back to their bank, or do they come to the SBA? Just if they wanted to pre-plan to make sure they were documenting and everything, who's the expert that they should go to make sure they're capturing everything correctly?
Well, normally that would be whoever does their accounting for them.
Okay.
So if they use a CPA, that's what I would do. I would go to your CPA and I would expect them to be able to advise you on that. If you don't have a CPA, you do those kind of things yourself, I will paste in the box right now the URL for a set of forgiveness webinars done by the Texas Gulf Coast Small Business Development Center, where they work through mathematical examples and they do a really good job. And that's the link right there. They do a really good job of explaining forgiveness and going through the calculations. And I believe that they will actually connect you with people that can help you with that if you are having problems doing it yourself.
Excellent, because that's, I think, been one of our challenges as we've gone through this is everything's been kind of fast and furious, which is great because we needed help very quickly.
Right.
But then not knowing where to turn to for the experts to make sure on the back end we were covered. And we know not to wait to the last minute because there's documentation you need, and we want to make good assumptions and all that. All right. So here's a question on PPP. Is there still money available? If I didn't apply initially because I didn't think that 8 weeks would work, and now I'm like, oh, this I could make work. Is there any money?
There is almost $130 billion available. So if you're thinking about a PPP, I encourage you to do it as soon as you can. There's a challenge right now. And the challenge is that if you go to a bank right now to apply for a PPP, we've just got finished telling them that the application is no longer any good and that we're going to be sending them a brand new application form. Excuse me, I've got a phone going off. I won't tell you why it's a dog sound, but yeah, it has to do with my old boss. But if you need a lender, if your current lender maybe isn't doing PPP or what have you, we can also connect you with lenders that are currently doing PPP loans. But again, I would tell you that in the next week, you need to have an application in with one of the lenders in the area because they have to get it approved for you by June 30th,
Right.
or the door closes.
Right. So that's that magic June 30th. So if you can't get an application in today because they're telling you it's on hold, make sure you've got the relationship and you just kind of stay on it pretty doggedly.
Got it. You got it. And you really want to have an application into a bank. I mean, June 15 is probably a little too quick, but I still think that's a good target because that gives plenty of time for them to work through and make sure they get the approvals by June 30.
Excellent. That's really good to know. So I guess here's one of the challenges that I think a lot of people are concerned about, but we're starting to reopen. Their customers are coming back. We're really excited, but things don't go right. And at the end of it all, somebody maybe, can't stay open, but they receive funds from one or both of these programs, what happens then? Basically if the business closes and they had a PPP or an idle grant, then what?
Well, then you have to pay it back.
Okay.
It depends on what you do after you close. I'm assuming if you close your restaurant because it just couldn't be viable, even though you got some assistance from PPP, then I can further assume that you might file for bankruptcy protection. And if you do, then under the bankruptcy protection, you may not have to pay that loan, or you may be able to get longer terms, or the things that happen under depending on which chapter of bankruptcy you file under. But if you did have to just pull up stakes and say, that's it, we're closing the place, we can't keep it open, then the PPP turns into a loan with either a 2-year or a 5-year term, depending on when you got it. And the EIDL is still a loan, and it's for 30 years. So that's great because that gives you a lot longer time to spread that amount of loan out and pay it back, but it still would have to be repaid.
All right, very good. So that's always we don't want that to happen. We're doing everything we can to keep away from there.
Exactly.
Any advice or commentary? Because we targeted this for a lot of our folks here in the Southeast Texas region, which means a lot of us had Harvey and we've had, one thing or another. So at some point people start looking and they're layering help upon help. Anything they need to know about if they received maybe some monies for Harvey and now they came back and did a PPP, is there any advice or wisdom to go with those two? Or are they just completely separate?
Yeah, they are. They're separate. The only way one relates to the other is just your overall indebtedness. So it's conceivable that unfortunately, because of Harvey, you may have a certain amount of debt that makes you less credit worthy now because you have a lot of debt. But other than that, no, there's nothing about having prior disaster assistance that would invalidate your ability to get more now.
So does the PPP count as debt until the point that it's forgiven, or is it assumed forgiven until it becomes a debt?
No, I think that the way a lender would look at it, as it is a debt, it's a very low risk debt. They actually have ratings for this kind of debt, and I forget what they call it, but it's a super low risk debt.
Okay.
So I wouldn't think that having a PPP would make a big difference to another lender or a future lender. Let's say you get through your PPP and you only get 50% forgiveness. Well, that means you got to pay it back. So that does affect your ability to get more loans and attract more capital. But it's a 1% potentially 5-year note. So that's not very expensive. So I think there are ways that could be shown that it's not a huge burden on the business.
Excellent. Okay, very good. Now, is there anything that's keeping the PPP and the EIDL from working together for folks who maybe have applied for both? Okay, so those are compatible with each other for different things. All right, just making sure.
Right, EIDL is much more suited for all the various categories of operating costs that you've got. So just the simple task of buying all the ingredients you need in order to make the meals in a restaurant. You can't do that with PPP, but you can do that with EIDL. So anybody that got both, you really want to use up your PPP for payroll, use your EIDL for everything else. And if you get done with PPP and you still need funding in order to keep running your restaurant, then that would be the time to really fall back on that EIDL.
Okay, excellent. And one of the things that some of our folks have had a little bit of a challenge with, and this goes back to the PPP, and I know you've heard this question a lot, but the bank that they had a relationship with is not writing PPP or has maxed out or whatever. Any kind of guidance on, it's hard to walk in a bank for the first day and say, hey, I've never done business with you before, give me some money.
Sure. No, here in Houston, there's probably roughly 20 banks that I know of that would be happy to do a loan with you right now. They would be very happy to help you out with PPP. They are completely caught up. So back in the early days of people going after PPP loans, we all heard the stories of Bank XYZ or Bank PDQ that would never answer phone calls and never return emails and et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a thing of the past. I don't believe that is occurring any longer. I'm real sure it's not occurring with the community banks here in Houston. The very large banks sometimes have had such incredible volumes of business that it might have impacted them, and probably impacted the community banks too, but they're pretty well caught up. So I put in the chat box the email address for my website here in Houston. You can go there. There's a chunk in the middle called Business Resources. One of those categories is coronavirus, and under that is a list of lenders. You click on that, it'll show you about 200 lenders in the Houston area. And among other things, it'll show you which ones are accepting brand new borrowers that they don't have an existing relationship with. Now, what they will probably do is they're probably going to ask you to open an account into which to deposit the money. I think that's probably a very good idea because it keeps your money separate from this PPP money, separate from everything else. And you can always transfer from there to wherever you're doing your payroll, that kind of thing. So that will probably be something they ask for. The SBA is not telling them to do that. They're doing that. But that's a small inconvenience or convenience for getting them to handle that loan for you.
Excellent. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think that you remember, like, oh, I want to make sure people remember this, or pitfalls that you see folks falling into? I mean, this is such a challenge. Any entrepreneur that, and I know y'all deal with them, you have to wear so many hats. You're doing so many things. And then, you know, our restaurants have really had a huge layering on top of question of, you know, problems like that. So just give you a minute, just think about any pitfalls we might be concerned about.
I think that with the PPP, it's the biggest challenge with PPP is the fact that it continues to change and evolve. On the one hand, that's completely expected because it's brand new to the world. It's only existed for a couple of months, and Congress's best ideas and then SBA's best interpretation of those, turning those into practice, and that's what we've got. So you do it and it covers 80% or 90% of the businesses, but there's a really important 10% that maybe wasn't very helpful for. So you got to make changes. And then it covers 91%, and you make changes, and then it covers 92%. And that's kind of what we're going through now. It's unnerving to see it constantly change like this, because as a borrower, you wonder, am I ever going to get forgiveness or not? Well, the intent is that you get this PPP money, and under the old rules, you spend 75% or more on paychecks, 25% or less on rent, mortgage, and utilities, and you get your FTE count back to where it was. You do that, and you don't have to pay back the loan. That is still the case. That's the point of this lending. We don't want you to pay it back. We want us to pay it for you, the SBA. So in the next, say, week, a lot of these rules will change. I believe they're going to change for all borrowers to be 60-40 instead of 75-25. It's going to change. It is changing for everybody to 24 weeks. It could change to 5-year instead of 2-year if you ask your lender to increase it if you already have a loan. And then there's a few other factors that are changing. So we're changing some of the details, but the spirit is still the same. Okay. This is money that can help your business. And with our help and with the help of our partners, I think if we don't get you to 100% forgiveness, we can get you pretty darn close.
Excellent. So one final question, because I think you've been so helpful, but what you've really been helpful with is some direct where to go to look for information. And that's what I think a lot of people need, is they just need someone to get really in the weeds with them for a couple minutes and say X, Y, Z, yes, ABC. So we opened this up because we wanted to make sure that we have restaurateurs kind of all over, not kind of out beyond the Houston region. If they reach out to you, your team will help them, even if they're, you know, up in Austin, right? If they get you on the phone?
We will. But for the ongoing care of your business, right, what we really need to do is then pass you off or hand you off, in the case of Austin, to the San Antonio district office. Excellent. Texas is so big, we have 6 offices here. So if you're up around Dallas, there's one there. If you're in South Texas, there's one there. There's one in El Paso, and then there's one in Lubbock. So we will sure enough help you, but we will then make sure that we get you passed to the right district office, because just like here in Houston, there are some resources available locally. Here, And in Austin, there are resources available there that aren't available to each city in exchange. So by connecting with that office, they'd be able to help you in the long term a lot better than we can. But absolutely, any questions anyone has, they can always contact our office. The email address that I gave you, we do our very best to respond to those within a day. It might take 2 days sometimes for more complicated questions, but we do our very best. And again, we do try to connect you with resources that are local to you that are able to also help you on an ongoing basis.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. And I really do appreciate your time. I know y'all are very, very busy.
Oh, you're welcome.
So the couple of things I just want people, before we sign off, go over to the chat and grab some of that data. If you don't get it, you can always reach out to my team directly and we'll connect you. But basically watch this space, because by the end of the week, first of next week, the kind of guidance that will come out to go with the updated PPP, and folks are going to be looking for that. And the other big thing that I heard that was super critical was, if you have not already secured your PPP and you're looking for it, get moving, because that has to be approved by the 30th or you're going to miss out. And so those were the big highlights that I grabbed. Again, Tim, thank you and your team so very much. Y'all are doing tons of work. We couldn't make it without you, for sure. We're so glad to have you as partners. And just thank you all. And for everyone who's on, if you got on late, we did record this and we'll make it available to you as soon as we do the upload and all that fun, funky stuff. Thank y'all so much, and y'all have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.